What's up, ghouls and gals? Today we are wrapping up every single movie we watched in the month of September. In September, we watched 42 movies, which I know sounds like a lot, but when you factor in short films, you know, things here and there, it's a lot. So let's get into everything that we watched in the month of September. Please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and check out all the links down below. If you would like to see any more of me or support the channel any further, my Letterboxd is always linked down below as well, which is where I will be doing my recap from. And if you missed last month's recap, we actually watched 61 movies, which was absolutely asinine. Also, with this video, if I am going to be talking about a movie in an upcoming video, I'm not really going to stay too much on it. If it's not horror, I'm just going to kind of breeze past it. If it's something that I've already seen, like, I'm just going to kind of try and do this as quick and painless as humanly possible, because these can get super long and I don't want to keep you here forever. All right, let's begin here on September 1st. This feels like such a long time ago now, but on September 1st we watched Children of the Corn with the Joe Bob night marathon. We went back and caught up with a few more movies, so this is one that we did. I was counting this as a first time watch because I was so young the first time that I saw this movie that I really didn't remember it, and what I have seen is mostly my memories piecing things together, and it wasn't a full movie in my head. So this was what I'm counting as my first time watch of Children of the Corn, even though technically it wasn't. Whatever, I enjoyed it for what it was. All I will say is the effects near the end, questionable at best. Moving on to a 1 minute short called The Death of David Cronenberg by David Cronenberg. This very much feels like a short film that came out of the pandemic. It is very David Cronenberg. Moving on. The first was a stacked day, but speaking of Joe Bob, also on the first we watched Barbie and Kendra crash Joe Bob's drive-in jamboree. I will always watch whatever Full Moon puts out, but this was a choice. Next after that, we watched Zeth, the story of Deadgrl, who, despite the this is one of the groups that I really have to separate the art from the artist, because this felt like a completely fabricated documentary to make them look better. But if you guys know about their controversies, they're not good people. But oh my god, they have some bangers, you know? Oh! Anyways, this was just a really weird documentary. I enjoyed hearing all the songs. We finally watched Miss 45, and this is what I want more of. I want more nunsploitation revenge, and not just a nun bringing in a new baby who is the devil and Antichrist. I want more nun revenge. Oh my god, we had such a busy day on the first. We finished the night by watching Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill, which we thought we had watched, but we did not. Michael Caine is absolutely unhinged in this film, and I love it. But with this film, like I said in my review, there is so much to watch in the background from shot to shot, and it's such a masterfully filmed movie, and I just really love how De Palma crafts a story. Anyways, moving on to September 2nd, we went back and watched an older episode of Monster Vision with Joe Bob. If you guys haven't noticed by now, we're the biggest Joe Bob fans here, but we watched an old episode of Monster Vision to catch up with Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse, which is a film that I've been obsessed with in my mind for so long, and we finally just watched it, and I feel like I hyped it up a lot. It wasn't what I thought. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be, I should say. It just wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, for me at least. Moving on, we watched 2 short films by the director of Dream Scenario and Sick of Myself. I'm just gonna leave them kind of like here for you, so we can just glaze over that. And then we were like we were in our short film era in the beginning of September. We watched a short film called Void, which is done by the director of Shiva Baby. And more recently, Bottoms. If you guys liked Bottoms, like, I really am a huge fan of Bottoms. And then we watched Gaspar Noé's Carne, whatever. This, we really should have watched before we watched I Stand Alone. Like, I knew it existed, I just did not do the service to myself to watch it first. The animal deaths in this are quite brutal and extremely visceral. The movie itself is very disturbing and very short, and that's why I love short films, because I do believe they pack such a crazy punch if done right. Speaking of a film that I do think was done right and really does play on like a lot of anxieties that I have felt personally, starring Micah Monroe, it is How to Be Alone. You can find this one on YouTube. It's just like a woman's worst case scenario being played out while her husband leaves for the night to go to work, but it's not actually happening. You know, it's just more of like anxieties and fears coming to life, but not actually coming to life. And then we watched The Profane Exhibit, which honestly wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. The one segment I was waiting for in this anthology was like the one shot I was looking forward to seeing. We didn't get to see until like 5 minutes and like before the end. I don't know, if you like disturbing films, like this is it has stuff in it, but it's not like crazy. And then as a palate cleanser, we watched Famous TNA Part 2, which is a full moon kind of recap of just famous boobies and in movies, of their movies, hosted by Darcy the Mail Girl. On the 3rd, we watched a film called An Evening with Beverly Loughlin, and don't let this like name throw you off. If you like The Greasy Strangler, if you like super weird comedies with a super stacked cast, this is one of them. This, honestly, like, this probably has so many people in it that you guys love in movies. Aubrey Plaza, Emile Hirsch, Jermaine Clement, Craig Robinson, Matt Berry, What We Do in the Shadows, one of our favorite actors. Like, just to name a few, and like they truly round this movie out and make it what it is, and it's so funny, and it's truly such a great comedy. It's a little long, but it's very good. On the 4th, we watched Citizen 4, which is the Edward Snowden like WikiLeaks documentary. This had been on my watch list for a long time. Finally got that one out. On the 6th, we watched Skincare, which I actually really enjoyed. I was expecting body horror out of this. I honestly was expecting like an Elizabeth Banks body horror movie, but do yourself a favor and look into the true story behind this movie before you go into it, because I definitely feel like it makes it that much more intense as you're watching. Alex was kind of reading me the real story as we were watching the movie in real time, and it's just like, how did this happen to someone, you know? On the 7th, we watched The Brain with an older Joe Bob Christmas special. That is a film that is exactly what you think it's gonna be. On the 7th, we watched Red Rooms again. We were lucky enough to get a screener from Utopia. Thank you very much. The first time it didn't sit with me. I really did not enjoy it. The second time, I definitely enjoyed the movie for what it is. I just feel like the characters that we follow are so unlikable, and it's such a chore to watch, but the courtroom proceedings are so good. And then at the very end, there's this like tense culmination of a bidding war, and if you guys have seen it, you know, it just makes the movie so scary and like so real. On the 7th also, like, we really put ourselves through it that day. We watched Compliance, and this is another movie that I had been putting off for a long time because I just didn't want to feel the feel. I am a very, if you guys follow my main channel, like I have a lot of feelings. You probably see me cry on the internet a lot. I just have a lot, like I feel everything. And this movie is one of the films that genuinely made me feel so much anxiety. I felt sick to my stomach. I felt anger. I felt so much frustration while watching Compliance. This movie is, when you see Anne Dowd in a film, you know shit's gonna hit the fan, you know? This is a film, another one, where the real life stories is just, it's so disturbing and it's so disgusting and it's so, and Pat Healy in this film, you know, if I ever see Pat Healy because of this film, he's one of my favorite actors, but like now that I've seen Compliance, like, you know? On the 8th, we went to go see Beetlejuice. I thought I gave it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5. Beetlejuice is my favorite movie of all time. I have said it before, I will say it again. I love Beetlejuice forever. Seeing number 2 on the big screen, I was negative 5 years old in 1988. You know, I wasn't even born yet. I didn't get a chance to see that in the theaters at all. And being able to see my favorite characters so, like, just with a crowd on open weekend, like, it was so beautiful, and I cried from the beginning, the opening logo, to the very ending. It was just such a beautiful experience for me. I don't care what you guys think of the film. I don't care if you hated it. I don't care if you, whatever. I loved it. Justice for Bob. Also, like I said in my review, something about seeing so much of my favorite thing, which is the sandworm, on, like, so large, it was like I was in awe. It was so fantastic. All right, just gonna skip right by this one. We watched Joey Chestnut versus Kobayashi on Netflix, and Joey Chestnut is my sleep paralysis demon. That is all I need to say. Speaking of demons, on the 8th, we watched The Demon Disorder on Shudder, which is a very good, like, the effects in this are effective. They're very good. But this is a really good story about, like, generational trauma and things like that, and how it affects the family going down the line. It's very good. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but moving on, we also watched Knives and Skin, which is a film directed by Jennifer Reeder, who did Perpetrator, which I talked about not too long ago. But this is a film about a girl that goes missing and kind of seeing the fallout of that. It was a good movie, but you gotta like a slow-paced kind of, yeah, you're just here for the ride and vibes movie. On the 11th, we watched Wise Guy, David Chase and the Sopranos, the documentary. We are big Sopranos fans around here, so just loved revisiting that through this doc. Okay, I am going to skip through all of these films here because we watched the entire Purge franchise. This is one of the first franchises which, with the first 4 movies, 3.5 stars all the way through. I did not like the last one, but I will say I genuinely enjoyed watching the first 4 films in the Purge franchise. I had never seen anything past the first one, and you know what? I was with it. I was in it. I was living it, and I enjoyed it until the last one. It just didn't sit right with me. I didn't like it. Okay, on the 14th, we watched a film called Booger, which I'm not going to really talk about much because I do want to elaborate in an upcoming video. This is pretty much a movie about a girl who, it's about grief, but a girl is seemingly turning into a cat at the same time. And it's good. It's not really horror. It's not overtly horror, but it does have body horror elements, I will say. On the 16th, we watched Tourist Trap with Jova. This is one that I will say made me hate the mannequins. I hate the faces. I hate the masks. I hate all of that. It was so icky, and I did not like how that made me feel. On the 20th, we watched a film called Bitch, which I also will not really elaborate much on because it is a film that I also will be talking about in an upcoming video, and maybe you can make the correlation here. This is about a film where the wife is turning into a dog. Anyways, on the 20th, we watched Creepazoids, which is starring Linnea Quigley, we love around here. This is by the director of Puppet Master, David Tikoto, and Charles Band. This is a full moon feature, and I feel like with those two, you can't go wrong. And Linnea, come on. This movie really, it has a great shower scene. If you know what I mean. On the 21st, we watched Blink Twice, and I have not stopped thinking about that movie since we watched it that day. It is so scary as a woman. It is so relevant. It is so horrific. It's fun. But let me tell you, it ruined Christian Slater for me entirely. Like I said to my mom, I was never a Channing Tatum girl, but Jesus Christ, there's another one, you know, I see Christian Slater, it's... On the 21st, we watched Intruder, which was a really, like, this is what I want from 80s movies. This is 80s schlock, and I love it. And speaking of 80s schlock, on the 21st, we watched Fatal Games, which is another one I will be talking about in an upcoming video. You know what? Just honestly, like I always say, I'm just trying to beef up my 80s horror knowledge. On the 23rd, we watched The Dissident, which is another very relevant documentary directed by Brian Fogel, who did Icarus. I had to go through my files. Icarus. If you guys have seen that documentary about the Olympic doping scandal, I feel like if you like that, you will like The Dissident. On the 23rd, we watched One Missed Call, the original. Like I said in my review, when I was growing up, for some reason, I hyper fixated on the remake for this movie, and perhaps it was Shannon Sossamon. Who knows? But every time this movie came on TV, I watched it in full. I loved it. But seeing the creepy woman coming out of the corners and depths of the dark, I did not like that at all, and this movie was so much more effective for me. You guys know I'm a baby when it comes to scary faces. On the 24th, we watched The Front Room, which, surprisingly, you know what? I've seen all the bad reviews. I liked this film. If you just think of this as a black comedy, as a dark comedy, it's just a movie with horror elements. Think of it as that. It's one of those films that are 10% horror. It's great. Brandy has not aged a day since I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Also on the 24th, we watched The Dirties, which is a film by Matt Johnson, who has impeccable humor. I will say, he stars in the film. This is a film about getting revenge against your bullies, but the way that they go about it is in a school shooting. It's not... In the climate that we are in today, this film is... I don't think it would fly today. But for the mockumentary that this is, I feel like for a revenge film about bullies, this film becomes so meta. Because it is a mockumentary, but it feels so real. It's so good, and it genuinely is so funny, but at the same time, it's so horrific. Okay, once again, back to our 80s schlock. We watched Spookies. This movie was not for me, but you know what? It's for someone. On the 25th, also, we watched the Mr. McMahon documentary. I always say this, that I feel like horror, metal music, and wrestling go hand in hand. I feel like those three are beautifully harmonious, and we had to watch it. We are big wrestling fans. Not recent wrestling. We are very much of the older age of wrestling. Anyways, moving on to the 27th and Apartment 7A, which is the prequel. Was whatever. It felt... You know what? Okay, we have to protect Julia Gardner at all costs. However, last year I read the book for Rosemary's Baby and rewatched the film. I don't like the way that Terry's story unfolded in this movie because it didn't feel true to how it was in the it felt changed to her true story, and I get they have to do that to make it more interesting or whatever they did. The ending was beautiful, but it wasn't how I felt it would have ended in the original story. Do with that what you will. It's a good movie. It's pretty much Rosemary's Baby with a different character. And no gaslighting husband, but there are gaslighting everybody around her. But once again, protect Julia Garner at all costs. On the 28th, we watched His Three Daughters, which is a film that I've been waiting for. This is not horror, but this did bring up a lot of feelings from when I was dealing with my grandma's death. And for me, it was another film that I just cried my way through. But also on the 28th, we watched Thoroughbreds. This is another film that I don't feel like was necessarily for me. However, it was so fun to watch Anya Taylor-Joy and Olivia Cooke be just menaces and plotting in this movie. It was great. On the 28th, also, we watched Safe by Todd Haynes, who we call Todd Cranes, because if you watch The Kardashians, you get the joke. Auntie Chris, it's me, it's Todd Cranes. Anyways, Safe is a film from 1995, which, as someone with a chronic illness and someone who's been diagnosed with a bunch of weird shit, this film is a horror movie for me. This is genuinely, like, she enters a cult for this, like, illness. I don't know. A chemical sensitivity, I don't have that. Okay, I don't have that. But let me tell you, if I were to, like, go and seek something out for my chronic illness and I ended up at a place that she ends up in the movie, I immediately would have been like, this is a cult, this is not gonna help, I have to go. And that's all I have to say. It was a horror movie for me. On the 29th, we watched Street Trash, which is a film I will be talking about in an upcoming video, so I'm not going to dwell on it. Great effects. Also on the 29th, we premiered The Little Shop of Horrors for the first episode of Cemetery Cinema. You can check that out. It's full movie here on the channel. I will leave it linked down below. Also on the 29th, we watched a film called Hidden, which is directed by the Duffer Brothers, who did Stranger Things, and stars Andrea Riseborough and Alexander Skarsgård. And for a film that you think is like a post-apocalyptic film, this has some wild twists. This feels like a true horror movie. This was really surprising and really good. We then followed that up with the Growing Up with I Spit on Your Grave documentary. This is on Tubi. I believe the Hidden, Street Trash, and this documentary are all on Tubi. But this is about the son of the director of I Spit on Your Grave, Mayor Zakari. So he directed I Spit on Your Grave. Terry Zakari, his son, directed the documentary. And as a film that I feel like was pivotal in me going down the rabbit hole to disturbing films, it was really great to see the behind the scenes and how what went into making this film and why it was made. And it's not just an exploitation film, like there is a lot behind it, and how much Mayor Zakari like rode for the sequel. Like there's just so much in this documentary that if you are a fan of disturbing films, highly seek this one out. And then we watched The Seeding, which I just talked about in my last video, so I'm not going to harp on it. Wasn't for me, but you know what? We don't yuck anybody's yum around here. Ending the month of September with Michael Haneke's Cachet. Like I said in my review, I feel like I built this movie up in my head to be something that it wasn't. I thought this was really going to make me disturbed, but maybe I sound kind of weird saying that, but when you seek out a Michael Haneke film, I feel like that's what you're looking for, because that's what he does. If you guys have seen Funny Games, like, you know what you're getting into. This was a little more quiet and a little more subtle than Funny Games for me. And I feel like I need to seek out more of his filmography and maybe revisit this one day. However, I will always watch Juliette Binoche. I think she is beautiful. I think she is so talented. If you guys have seen the film, it's called Wildflower. One of the like jokes between like the family and the movie. Like this is a film that not a horror film, came out a little while ago, with Kieran and Shipka. It's about her raising her, you know, like mentally challenged parents. Like they're not fully developed, but they are so much in love, and it's a beautiful story, and I love it so much. But like they have to like remind, like everybody is the same. We are all just human. We all have poo in our butt. And the dad goes, does Julia Binoche have poo in her butt? Yeah, she does. So I'm gonna leave you there. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've seen anything that I mentioned throughout this month. This was a very chaotic video. I'll be back for another list or something and a new episode of Cemetery Cinema we'll be watching at Carnival of Souls. I'll see you then. Sayonara, Spooky fans.